Hi everyone, welcome to the Seminary Co-op Bookstores 2023 annual community meeting. It's so wonderful to see so many of you here in person. My name is Noor Shawaf and I'm the Senior Director of the Seminary Co-op Bookstores. As the nation's first and only not-for-profit bookstore whose mission is bookselling and the bookstore itself, it is truly exciting to welcome all of you to our annual community meeting this evening. For the opportunity for deep engagement with our store and our work and all of the ways in which our community supports that. For those of you who are viewing via Facebook Live, thank you so much for joining. We're thankful to have you tuning in and encourage you to participate through the chat option and share any questions. There will be an opportunity to share questions at the end of our evening together. Also note that there are the slide presentation, which we will be seeing in the room here at the Co-op, is also available on the Facebook post. So a few pieces of housekeeping before I introduce Katie and Jeff. First, we ask that you kindly silence your phones if you might, and if you're using flash photography, just do so, not quite so liberally. And we'll have the opportunity to share questions about our store, mission and work in a dedicated Q&A portion at the end of our time together. So do bring those, and we look forward to the healthy discussion. With that, it's now my pleasure to introduce you to Katie Parsons, the President of the Seminary Co-op's Board of Directors and Senior VP of 270 Strategies, who will be sharing updates on the board's leadership. Katie.
Thanks, Noor. Thank you to everyone who is here. I have the very simple but pleasurable task of thanking people. It's really what I'm here for. And I'm so grateful to everyone who cherishes these stores by buying books, by coming to author events, asking questions, buying things online. Every way that you engage with the stores is a way that you show that you're a part of this really special community. I want to thank a couple of board members who are finishing their service this year. I think there's a picture of them. So first, thank you so much to Ken Warren. He's not here, but still really deserves an incredible amount of gratitude. He was the president of the board from 2017 to 2020, which was a pretty tumultuous time for the stores, also for the world toward the end of that, and personally, it was such a great experience to really learn about leadership from him and his style of being a leader. We're really grateful to Ken for his service. Also, Erin Adams, who has been a passionate advocate for the stores on the board. We're really going to miss her. She's moving on to something in the admin, the provost office, yes. But she's been such a great voice for the stores. And then for Martha, who was really one of the folks who spearheaded our non-gala gala, now known as our annual fundraising drive, but she's really put a lot of energy and creativity into the way that we communicate with you about the need to give to the stores, which we're going to do a lot more of. We also have several new board members who I'm very excited to introduce: Lori Burko, Eric Slaughter, and Andy Semnick. Lori is the Vice President and Secretary of the university. Eric is Deputy Dean of Humanities, the Associate Professor of English, and the Founding Director of the Carla Scherer Center for the Study of American Culture at the university. And then Andy is founder of Operationally, a consulting firm that works with cultural institutions to think through their operations and strategies. So we have three really incredible new board members, and I'm excited to work with you over the coming years. I also want to thank the whole board, who has spent a lot of time and shared their expertise over many years, but especially this year we've asked more. We continue to ask more and more of the board every year, and I'm so grateful to everybody who responds to that call. Thank you to the staff and to management, who you all work so hard to actually create this culture that makes the store such a special place. We're so grateful for you and your hard work. And then finally, thank you to everybody in the room. Earlier this year, the board got together for a retreat where we spent some time revisiting, recommitting to a strategic plan that we developed together in 2020. But a lot of the time that we were spending together was thinking about how we talk to people about the need for supporting the stores financially. Why are we asking you for this money? It is a bookstore after all. And tonight, Jeff is really going to answer that question in great depth. And I'm excited to hear him do that. I'm not going to answer that, but I will say thank you because I know that we have asked more of you. We will continue to ask more of you. We know that we really couldn't do this without you, without your support. And I hope that you all feel that and know that we know. And that's all from me. Jeff? Or actually, Nora, you.
It is truly wonderful to have so many board members with us this evening. Eric, Lori, and Andy. So with that being said, tonight I'm also delighted to introduce our executive director, Jeff Deutsch. Jeff has been the director of the Seminary Co-op and 57 Books since 2014, and is now the executive director and has been a bookseller since 1994 and is deeply generous with all of his bookselling wisdom, to say the least. He's the author of In Praise of Good Bookstores, published by Princeton University Press, which celebrates the ideals and possibilities of bookstores like ours. Without further ado, I'll turn it to Jeff.
Excuse me. Okay. Welcome. This is exciting. Welcome to the annual meeting for the Seminary Co-op Bookstores. As Nor said, we are the first not-for-profit bookstore whose mission is bookselling, and that mission is about the bookstore itself, the operation of it. Thank you for being here and not somewhere else. 10 years ago, almost to the day when I first applied for this job, I thought it wise to read then board president Harry Davis's newly published book, Why Are You Here and Not Somewhere Else? I asked that question often as I contemplated leaving what I thought was the job I'd retire from and from the forever home I thought I had in Oakland, California. And I've asked and answered that question often over the last 10 years. As we work closely with you, our community, to make an existential case for the sort of bookstore that the Seminary Co-op and 57th Street Books embody and the sort of institution we represent. But why are you here and not somewhere else? I imagine your answers are as varied as the 100,000 books on our shelves. We recently asked many of you this. We sent a survey to 3,700 of our most engaged community members. More than 1,000 of you responded. Respondents ranged in age from 18 to 90 years old, born between the years 1933 and 2005. That's 72 years. All right, check this out. 70 of those 72 years were represented in the respondents. People born in 1934, 1938, 1941, every year except two. 1935, 1935 and 2000, 1935 and 1989, randomly, 1989, don't ask. The respondents came from over 350 zip codes, reaching to Hawaii and back into the East Coast. The fact is that the Seminary Co-op community, like the stacks themselves, is quite varied, and your interests in the stores are quite varied. Here's what you told us. Quite a few of you called the stores a cultural treasure. Many of you spoke of community, calling us true community builders and enthused about our children's books and programming, saying it was your favorite place in Hyde Park and your favorite place in your kids' lives. One of you grew up in a rural town without any bookstore, and when you came to college, we were the first bookstore you could visit. You said that stopping by still brings you joy. Another of you grew up here, and then, inspired by us, opened a bookstore in Eastern Europe after the fall of communism. You said that we have been a formative institution in your life and are enormously grateful to the folks who keep it running. Some of you recognize who that is, perhaps. Amazing. See, this is community. This is beautiful. One of you said that you didn't mean to be critical, but other bookstores have too many things other than books, and that you walk into the Seminary Co-op and feel that you are at a bookstore. Many of you called out the knowledgeable, courteous, helpful, friendly, warm, professional, and well-prepared staff of booksellers. You called us an incalculable component of the neighborhood's character and the best in the world, followed by the exclamation, "I mean it." You called out the stacks, noting that they are brilliant and so well curated that browsing is an education in itself, and that you always find books that you weren't expecting and which you end up loving. You called us a paradise, a place for a dynamic celebration of ideas, a space for mind, heart, and soul, and a place of engagement that touches the soul. The reasons for your loving the stores might be varied, but the passion with which you love them is shared. It is what drives you to engage us so deeply, and it is what has allowed us to survive over the last 30 years against all odds. And I imagine it is why you are here tonight and not somewhere else. While there are varied reasons you engage, there are three common motivations we find in most of our patrons. One, you want a place in which to buy books. Very simple. Two, you want a place in which to browse, consider, and discover books. And three, you want a place that builds and fosters bookish community. You want a place, this is important, and we offer you two, the Seminary Co-op and 57th Street Books. Over the last year and a half, I have visited bookstores across the globe, speaking with booksellers and their communities about our model and our work, and I can tell you a few things I've learned. I've learned that the industry, inspired and beautiful as booksellers are, is in serious trouble. Bookstores are cultural goods, and with very few exceptions, all booksellers must supplement their revenue in order to cover the cost of maintaining their book spaces. I've learned that the Seminary Co-op is a singular institution, and I say this without pride. I would love to be one of many doing this particular work, but I state it simply as fact. We are singular. I've learned that our bookstores are world-class and serve as a beacon to so many. And I've learned that we must establish a financial model to support the work, our singular work certainly, but also the work of bookselling more generally, if we are to preserve our bookstores. Why? Well, there are two critical truths that we must acknowledge. One, in the 21st century, no reader needs a bookstore to buy books. They can be bought online more cheaply from warehouses without the overhead of a brick-and-mortar store or knowledgeable booksellers to pay. And two, generally speaking, because the margins are so slim on new books and the cost of operating a bookstore so high, bookstores cannot make a living selling new books. In fact, selling books in a good bookstore doesn't make money, it costs money. And to be clear, that it costs money doesn't mean you should spare us that cost. We want you to buy books from us. It is, in fact, our mission, and I'll explain more about that in a minute. Okay, so you don't need a bookstore to buy books. Do we need bookstores at all? And if so, why do you want a bookstore? So again, one, you want a place from which to buy books. Two, you want a place in which to browse, consider, and discover books. And three, you want a place that builds and fosters bookish community. Why is this important to state? Because we believe that we must build a 21st century bookstore deliberately, that it will support the work we are hoping it can achieve. And that is why in 2019, after extensive dialogue with you, including so many of you who are here today, and with our community, and after a unanimous vote at our shareholder meeting, we established the first not-for-profit bookstore whose mission is bookselling, i.e. creating the bookstore itself. Our model is really quite simple, but in its simplicity, it is as profound as it is radical. The work it centers is the bookstore itself. Yes, we are here to sell books, but the goods we are providing are the browsing experience and the feeling of belonging to a bookish community. And so we center the bookstore itself and the professional work of bookselling, without which our stores would fail as cultural and community centers. You would still be able to buy books, at least until online retailers didn't need the warehouse space for something more profitable, but what would be lost? How do we quantify discovery and browsing, dialogue and community? What is the value of these things? What are they worth? And simply put, what are the costs and how do we cover them? Before I answer those questions, I'd like to address a common misperception. When it comes to paying for our work, which means putting books on the shelf, covering operational costs, and paying booksellers a wage that allows them to live where they work, booksellers are not retailers. Sure, we engage in retail activities, we buy and sell things, but our mission isn't to buy and sell those things for a profit. This is a counterintuitive truth, so let me go a bit further in depth. How does our work differ from retail? Some of you might think that if we just sell books for more than we buy them from publishers, certainly we could find a way, given our fixed and variable costs, to drive enough sales that we can make a living on scale. And you're not wrong to assume so, considering we have been masquerading as retailers for years now. If we were to engage a retail consultant to help us improve our bottom line, what are some levers they might advise we pull to maximize profitability? They would likely ask that we consider sourcing, purchasing, and pricing, but that wouldn't work in bookselling. For instance, a retailer might competitively source their stock, but not so booksellers. Alas, each book is only available at its steepest discount from its publisher. Most books, unlike most other retail products, are singular and irreplaceable, so like items can't be exchanged. If we want to stock the latest title from Penguin Press, we can't go to HarperCollins to get it cheaper. There are no generic brand copies available of Zadie Smith's latest novel, much less the scholarship that university presses are publishing. Another thing a retailer might do is consolidate purchasing and negotiate with their suppliers on price, which is another avenue unavailable to booksellers. There are strict antitrust guidelines in place in the industry that prevent publishers from treating like stores within sales channels differently. And so bricks and mortar retail stores, including stores like Barnes & Noble, are treated as one channel with the same terms. And then lastly, there's pricing, which I will go into in depth, including market-appropriate pricing. For instance, charging a higher amount for a latte in San Francisco, California, than one would in Jacksonville, North Carolina. Imagine engaging a retail consultant, and we have engaged many over the years. Here are some pricing strategies that they might recommend. They might recommend cost-plus pricing. This is the most common strategy most business retailers use. To do this, simply add a percentage-based markup to the product cost, and then you'll know what to charge. Publishers, however, determine the prices at which books are listed, not the retailer. So we can sell below list price, but not above it. The latte example wouldn't work for us. There's something called penetration pricing. This is where you initially charge lower prices than your competitors, and after that, gradually increase the price as your market share grows. This is a strategy that Amazon has used, and this precise strategy first devalued books, and then, once Amazon raised their prices, it devalued bookstores and the work of booksellers. Competitive pricing. Competitive pricing is when you keep prices lower than your competitors. Again, Amazon's strategy for a while, and they've used this to make books into loss leaders, products sold at a loss in order to increase sales on more profitable products. There are other things like premium pricing and value pricing where the price is higher and they're creating a sense of value in the stores, a perceived value of the service, make the retail brand more attractive. Consultants overall say that we should try to be innovative if we increase pricing, and that the best selling price must be market and cost driven. It should be both high enough to pay expenses and enable the retailer to turn a profit, and cheap enough to draw in customers and increase sales volume. I will go into depth about why this doesn't work for a nonprofit model and for a bookstore. First, though, here are a few more suggestions we've taken seriously from consultants. And again, retail is a noble effort. It's a noble trade. So we're acknowledging the good work that retailers do. So other things might include reducing inventory to increase profitability of sales by square foot, lowering expenses, and cutting salaries. Those are three other things we might consider. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about bookstores more generally. Bookstores in general can no longer survive purely by selling books as retailers would. The numbers don't add up, and we're going to do some numbers today. None of the solutions above would work for our store, but I'll make the case also that they don't work for a more traditional bookstore either. I want to state this clearly. We are not doing anything wrong. We're not missing some quick fix. We're choosing a model and an incorporation that prioritizes cultural and not financial dividends. So how are we at the Co-op substantively different from other bookstores? So we're going to talk about inventory, gross margin, inventory turn, and labor. So first, in the industry average, 82% of their sales are through books, and for us it's 99%. And the average in the industry that I'm pulling from is the independent bookselling industry, not Barnes & Noble. This is through the American Booksellers Association financial data, published a month and a half ago. Gross margin, how much we get for the books that sell, 47%. And at the Co-op, it's 39%. And the reason that that's lower is because we are carrying books that are from smaller presses, university presses, scholarly books, and books by otherwise underrepresented authors and publishers. That is different from trade books, which are the big five publishers, and that's how you get that 47%. We sell books slower. Okay, so inventory turn is how quickly we sell all of the books in our inventory. If we sold every single one of our books once a year, we would have an inventory turn of 1. Retailers try and get to about a 3 if they're profitable. 2.9 is the industry average. It's not quite a 3, and we are at a 1.3. Okay, and we're going to talk about why and what a service that is for our community. And then labor, we will talk deeply about labor, and we'll go into depth about how this works. And I want to linger on this point for a minute because I know that we're all underpaid. So I understand when we talk about labor, people think, oh, yeah, I'm underpaid too. So, and you are, I'm sure, but I'm going to talk about the special case of booksellers. All right, so labor, $12.80 an hour is the median wage in the industry. Does anybody know what minimum wage in Chicago is right now? $15.50 is close, but it's a little bit higher than that, but that's close. It's $15.80 now, and it'll go up to $20. So we're at $16 an hour as a starting wage, and we're going to talk about that, as I said, in depth. So on this chart, I'm going to show you the industry average, what we pay, what Cook County's living wage is, and what professional minimum wage was from the Department of Labor 7 years ago, which we'll talk about what that is. Okay. So the industry minimum wage is $26,624. Imagine living on that in Chicago. That's the industry median wage. It's below minimum wage in Chicago. We, of course, couldn't legally pay that. But the reason I'm sharing that is because our industry, as I said, the prices are fixed and the margins are fixed. So in Jacksonville, North Carolina, they can pay that. And that is how the model is built. We can't. So we're not saying that we're proud to pay minimum wage. It's the law, and we are above it. Our median wage is $34,000 a year, which is 28% higher than the median minimum wage in the industry. And we hope to get our hourly staff to $37,440, which is our career bookseller position salary. These would be career booksellers as opposed to higher turn part-time booksellers who come and go. And that number of 37,000 is 40% higher than what the industry average is. Living wage in Cook County, as of 2019, there has been a lot of inflation since 2019. New numbers have not been released. Is $40,000 a year. Our ultimate goal, however, is to meet, and I say this, our next goal, we want to continue to increase it, is to meet what the Department of Labor in 2016 said was the minimum wage for an exempt employee, an employee who is exempt from overtime, meaning they are doing work that is considered specialized and professional, and that number was $47,000 a year. $47,000 a year in Chicago does not go very far, okay? And as you know, and that was in 2016. That decision was reversed prior to its planned implementation in 2017. And that number now is 34,000, something like that. So we would like to acknowledge that booksellers are professionals and that a $47,000 wage is not exorbitant and frankly is the least we can do, but you can see why the numbers don't add up. Okay? Okay, so bookstores in general can't make a living selling mostly books and paying staff enough to get by. The numbers don't add up, and what I want to make clear is that even if we acquiesced and we implemented every cost-cutting, profit-enhancing initiative a consultant would advise, it wouldn't work. It would only gut what's exceptional about our stores, and we would still be in the red. So even if, with all those higher margins and non-book items and a quicker inventory turn, and so inventory turns higher, fewer books on the shelves, fewer university press books, fewer small press books. Instead of 100,000 books on the shelf, we would have something like 35,000 books on the shelf to get that inventory turn of 3. And then with labor cuts to get the salaries down, lower salaries, which obviously is impossible. Even if we did all of that, it would, in the industry average, net us 1.3% of total sales. That's how we'd get to 1.3. However, this year, COVID relief funds accounted for 1.2% of bookstores' revenue. We received some as well, and that's a huge part of how we're making it through the year. That would leave us with 0.1% of gross profits. So we had a $2.35 million year last year. If we did that, reduce the inventory, and carry the books that only sell quickly with higher margins, it would get us to $2,350, which, by the way, there are many owners who are reporting on this survey who don't pay themselves, which is lovely that they're supplementing the store with their own time and volunteering it, but that number is actually inflated. So we would end up in the red, okay? Our expenses, so how about we cut expenses? Find a way to cut expenses, our consultant might say. 90% of our expenses are almost evenly split between putting books on our shelves and paying our staff. So 43% of our expenses are labor costs, 47% are inventory costs. So clearly cutting expenses is not a solution. And that 10% is tight. We have tightened that. We have created tremendous efficiencies, and the staff is doing an incredible job of making sure that we are doing what we need to do to get the books out as quickly as possible. Okay, so now our consultant might say, but why are you carrying all those books that sell slowly? Why are you carrying those books that no other store is carrying? And I want to say very clearly that there is, in fact, a market for these books. And they're slow-selling books. They're by small, nonprofit, and university presses. They might say that we're functioning more as a museum than a store, but I say that that is not true, and I want to show you why and how. And I know I'm throwing a lot of math at you, so please bear with me as I share just a few more numbers that will explain why this is most certainly not the case. There is a market for these books. If we're looking outside of a retail paradigm that is meant to maximize profit margin and inventory turn, these numbers are remarkable, and they will bring tears to your eyes if you are one of these customers who buys these books. So we sold 26,871 titles over the last 12 months. These are not copies of books. These are titles, unique titles. And of those titles, more than 60% of them were single copies. Okay, so that's the largest in that pie chart, 60%. The 16,207 books that we sold were one book to one customer all year. It's beautiful. 16,000 books were to one customer all year. That book sat on the shelf for you, for one customer. More than 16%, 4,377 were double copies. There were two of you. Okay? So what does that mean? It means 76%, more than 3/4 of the books that we sold, of the titles that we sold, were for one or two of you. It's beautiful. Is it great retail? No. Is it an exceptional job of doing the cultural work in our communities? Yes. Here's another number. There isn't an accompanying slide, but so bear with me again, it's a lot of math. So over 6,000 titles, which was 20% of all titles that we sold, sat on our shelves for more than a year before they sold. We bought the book for more than a year, or bought it over a year ago. 20% of them. Books are generally meant to sell in 3 to 6 months, which even that duration a retail consultant will tell you is a long time to warehouse your inventory. Think about how long it takes to research, write, edit, publish, and market a book. And then if the author is lucky, they'll have 3 to 6 months, if they're lucky, in which to sell that book in a bookstore. We sold titles from more than 400 publishers. I should have just asked you, how many publishers do you think there are? And if anyone guessed over 150, 400 publishers. Sure, the top 20 publishers accounted for 80% of the sales, but nearly 4,000 titles were sold by the other 380 publishers. Think about those 4,000 readers and those 380 publishers whose work would not be supported otherwise. And think about those 18,000 readers, you, I'm sure, many of you among them, who found a book on the shelf that was waiting just for them and just for you. Now I want to bring another point though. Remember, we are not just I'm speaking of sales here, but we are not meant to just sell books alone. We are creating a place. Our mission is the bookstore itself. The product is the browse. Even before those 20,000+ books sold, they were earning their keep on the shelves. Ours are open stacks, and so you, our community, browse those books before they sell. Those books are not what retailers would call dead inventory, and as an aside, we do cull, return, and mark down well over $100,000 per year of what we consider to be, quote, dead inventory, books that aren't selling. But the books that sell slowly are serving a purpose prior to their sale. They're invigorating the browse. As one of our community members and donors and survey respondents, Pat Atkins, wrote in response to our survey question, how do you choose books? She said, from what's laid out on the tables and in the stacks at the Seminary Co-op and nowhere else now. Why? Because I trust your vetted selection of the writers I am and would be interested in. And you offer more of a huge variety of choices than anywhere else. Probably more academic. But plus, I noticed that your community of readers and browsers is delighted to be at the Co-op, sometimes coming from afar, and to share their enthusiasm congenially with each other. You recognize yourself in that? I do. She's right, Pat. The relationship between the bookseller and our community is special, and we take our work very seriously. Sorry, okay. Forgive me, okay. We recently announced the publication of the first volume in our first Ode Books imprint of Prickly Paradigm Press. Actually, let me get to that. Okay, Reading the Room, by the brilliant and legendary head buyer at City Lights Books in San Francisco, and the most recent recipient of the Literarian Award from the National Book Foundation. It's an award that recognizes lifetime contributions to American literature. This will be Paul's first book. It is as a bookseller that he was recognized with this prestigious award. I hope you all pre-order a copy today. I think you have QR codes on your handouts if you'd like to. The book will be released in April. It's timed to coincide with Paul's 75th birthday. We have been circulating some very early drafts as part of a peer review process, and I'd like to share a reflection I received from our Deputy Director, Stephanie Dubert, who began her bookselling career in Parisian bookstores in 2004 after attending a French bookselling institute. She says, Paul's book does a great job of demystifying the aura of what makes great bookstores and great booksellers. It goes deep to the core. Individual and communal joy, curiosity, enthusiasm, trying, caring about the ecosystem of the book, caring about people, being engaged, generous, and accepting being cared for. Reading Paul's book, she said, awakened something purely joyful in me, hungry, curious, something that is at the root of why I am a bookseller. She points to this passage, which I will read to you, noting the joy it evokes. Paul writes, whatever we end up calling it, the determining factor is what is the possibility of joy? At the end of the day, that's what we're looking for. Current modes of thinking help suppress things that bring us joy. We think of independent bookstores as toolboxes to recover those things, to understand the basis for joy for the individual. Thank you, Paul and Stephanie. The Seminary Co-op booksellers take care and bring joy, curiosity, and enthusiasm to their work of building these spaces for you. As I close out, I want to bring this back to you and your role in ensuring these stores thrive for generations to come, persist for generations, and do so without compromising their character, and do so while offering booksellers professional remuneration. Those are our three goals. Persist for generations without compromising the character, and pay a professional salary. And while I can't answer why you are here and not somewhere else, I can tell you what you can do to support these stores and help ensure others might discover them, that they will be here in perpetuity. It's clear we need alternative revenue sources and a reimagining of the ecosystem of the book in the 21st century, especially the book as cultural object, not the commodity that belongs only to the world of media and ephemeral entertainments. We have already started conversations within the book industry about how our new model, which is an original channel and can be treated differently than other bookstores, can help support our shared cultural goals, especially among nonprofit and university presses. We have also been developing our consulting services, working with multiple cultural institutions, charging for our curatorial and programming work, which historically has been considered paid simply through the margin we make selling books. We are committed to better articulating the value of our work, communicating the cost, and no longer masquerading as a retailer whose operation gross margin alone can support. Okay? We've been working with foundations, educational institutions, and municipalities to articulate the case for their investment in our work, as it will create a more engaged populace, improve dialogue across difference, and yes, increase property values as bookstores increase a community's quality of life. But lastly, we've been working with you, with individuals who believe deeply in our bookstores. Even for those of you who are not spiritually moved by these sacred spaces, there is an economic case to be made for supporting these stores the way communities support their cultural institutions, by funding their work. 224 of you donated to this year's annual fundraising campaign, giving an average of $150 apiece, which is $12.50 a month. Thank you. Ours is a $750,000 annual deficit, $750,000 annual deficit. That's the investment that we make in these stores, and that's what we want to continue making. If only half of our nearly 10,000 members who shopped with us last year gave $150 per year to support our work, we would be solvent. If all of you as members gave $150 per year to support our work, we would be able to pay professional salaries and return to our pre-pandemic levels of inventory. $12.50 per month, just for members. This isn't even customers, this is members. Last I checked, and that was today, I checked for the first time in a very long time, a Prime membership at Amazon's price. It is now nearly $150. How about that? If you have an Amazon Prime membership, and there are many good reasons why you might, there's no shame in it, perhaps think of this as an equivalent of a carbon offset. If not, perhaps you can think of it as you would other public goods like WBEZ or the Art Institute membership that so many of us have. As I round out my 10th year leading the co-op, I'm feeling quite optimistic. Why? With this $750,000 deficit, without a business model that is accepted in the industry? Well, partly because we've made it through a move, through multiplying financial crises, through a global pandemic that took half our business and from which we're only now beginning to recover. We're still down 30% in sales to where we were prior to the pandemic. And we are now operating within a structure that prioritizes our mission. And because today, I am proud to work with one of the most inspired groups of booksellers that I've had the privilege of serving with in nearly 30 years of bookselling. And because of you. Because you're here and you're not somewhere else, because you care, because you bring your joy, your curiosity, and your enthusiasm to these spaces. I've been critiqued for being a bit of a mystic about the purposes of this store, and I accept that critique, if by mystic is meant an enthusiast. Trust me, I know the ways in which I and my mysticism can be a bit much at times. But I also know that it's precisely the ineffable quality of our work that makes these bookstores great treasures, these beacons of hope, creating joy for so many. This store is an act of love by and for our community. And even if you don't believe that, I'm certain you believe they are worth preserving for generations to come. So I thank you for your support, and I'm keen to hear questions and to continue the conversation with you. Thank you. Open forum. Questions?
Where is that deficit being made up right now? It's obviously not coming from all the different donors we get here, as wonderful as it is that they give.
Yeah.
So what is making it?
Where is the deficit making up right now? Well, I'll tell you, a huge part of it are those COVID relief funds. So we have a mix of COVID relief funds. We have foundation money that is temporary, a multi-year grant. If anyone works for a foundation, especially one that is not 501c3 and wants to support our work, we strongly encourage you to speak with us about that work. As I said, we have educational institutions who are investing in us. We're charging for consulting and the donations. So, and we're making it work, and I feel really good about this fiscal year, which ends at the end of June, but we're going to need, oh, and did I mention COVID relief funds? Did I say that? Okay, the COVID relief funds are significant. That's more than half of it right now, and so we need to make up $400,000 of COVID relief funds, but we'll do it.
Another small way that members can support bookstores is by not actually using their discount, donating back effectively. Do you have a sense of how much that contributes?
Yeah, thank you for that.
How you could increase that?
Yeah, thank you for that. So the question is, for those of you who use the member credits, which is a rebate on all purchases, many of you donate them back, and thank you for doing so. We have a number, I don't have it off the top of my head, about $100,000 that's donated back. So that gets us to a full margin, low margin. But I want to, there's a really interesting psychological thing that happens with a lot of you and a lot of us, which is that we want that rebate and it brings us back into the stores, and then we would donate on top of it more than that amount. And so for those of you who need it, and I think part of what we're trying to do, as I mentioned, there's so many varied ways that you engage with the store, and for some, they love coming in the stores, but they don't buy anything because they have full bookcases. Many longtime Hyde Parkers have this problem, trying to, books should go out, not in, or one for one, which is very hard for many of us. And then there are others who can't afford, who need that discount and can't afford to pay full price for a book. And we want to make sure that the books are accessible to all. You know, I come from a community where a lot of people give money to institutions that they don't attend because they believe strongly that those institutions should exist. And they would never step foot in those institutions, but they want the world to have these kinds of places. And I think for many Hyde Parkers, longtime Hyde Parkers and others who might use the library or might not be in the market for books, to consider supporting the stores just financially without actually buying books. So thank you for that question. And there are so many ways to support us. And we're going to be rolling out an advertising project with publishers and other like-minded cultural institutions. So if you're part of one, talk to us about how to reach our 50,000 members on our email base. And we're only going to take advertisements from like cultural institutions. We're really looking to be creative in how we recognize the work that we're trying to do, which is help you discover books, create bookish community, and be in spaces that are for books. Other questions?
Is the word seminary a problem?
Is the word seminary a problem? I don't know. All right, quick show of hands. Who thinks the word seminary is a problem? Oh, that's interesting. Wow, really? Not one? Come on.
We're all used to it. We live here.
We live here. Okay, so it's called the Seminary Co-op Bookstore, and we're no longer in the seminary, though I was over in the old seminary building last week. We are no longer a member-owned co-op, and we are still a bookstore. So when you call the bookstore for years and years and years, it's just bookstore. That's how we would answer the phone. It's religious instruction. Another mystic. I like it.
It's a brand.
It's a brand. We don't, it's interesting. We had a donor who gave us $50,000, wrote a check for $50,000 before we went nonprofit, who for the longest time, for about a year, didn't want to engage us because she thought we were a religious institution. And she hadn't been here since she was a kid. It was an inheritance she got, and she wanted to support the causes that the deceased cared about, and one of them was us, and wrote a check for $50,000 after finally learning that we were not a religious institution, which she would not support. So, yes or no. Other questions?
Two questions. Can you just talk briefly about the relationship between publishers and bookstores? And is there something positive? Is there something negative? Is it antagonistic?
Great question.
Are they interested in the bookstores? And the second one, sir, is just, it seems to me that like WFT and the musical groups, for example, here in the city of Chicago, they look to cultivate listeners. So they engage in these programs to develop future generations.
Right.
Books need readers, read books. Is there anything like bookstores operators think about how you cultivate the next generation?
God.
Including widening certainly, because I think there's something there.
Yeah.
People don't know about this type of literary. So that was my two questions.
Two great questions.
I would like to say,
Yeah.
after the privilege to say that I really thought this was wonderful delivery on your part.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. So the first question, I'm going to take them one at a time. The first question is there an antagonistic relationship between publishers and bookstores, or what does that relationship look like? So it's a great question, because one of the things that we're really trying to do and that we believe strongly in is that there shouldn't be. That there are low margins everywhere, and that we're really trying to support an ecosystem, and we don't think that the solution is within the industry. We think the solution is outside the industry, that the entire industry is underpaid, under-resourced, undervalued. And we all, and Amazon did a really great job of devaluing the work all across the board. And we have not done a great job, in fact, we've done a poor job of speaking up for ourselves. There is a humility among booksellers and publishers and authors that has not served us well in this particular way. And my hope is that we can all be a little bit more candid about the value of the work and speak to what we do, and not pretend to be retailers and not pretend to be making it work, and not pretend that this business isn't supplemented by intergenerational wealth and different ways that people find to donate their time. That's really how this business happens. And by this business, I mean bookmaking, and then book selling, and all of it, everything that goes into it. We work very closely with publishers, distributors, authors, agents. We think it's incredibly important that we are all raising our voices on behalf of the work we do. That said, I think there are many booksellers who do feel that way towards publishers, and perhaps there are publishers who feel that way towards booksellers. One of the questions I've been asking of publishers is, do you care about bookstores? And if so, why? And it's an earnest question, because Borders went out of business, gosh, 10 years ago now, maybe, something like that. And book sales in the US were really not affected. Okay, readers are buying books. It's just about where they buy them from and which books they're buying. And if every independent bookstore went out of business tomorrow, by the end of 2024, there probably would not be an appreciable dent in overall book sales. Now, which books sell would change significantly. We can't discover books. I mean, our front table is magical. It is magical. 400 publishers represented in the sales at the store, just the sales. And you walk that front table, look at the colophons, look at the books, look at where we're getting those books from, and then go into any other great bookstore and look at their front table. It's remarkable, and I think that is something to be celebrated. So we love the industry, we really care deeply about it, and we consider ourselves partners. The other question was, cultural institutions in general have an audience that might be aging, and what are we doing to engage younger, to widen the circle and engage more people to bring them into the community? Through literacy too. Great. It's a great question. So one of the things that I didn't do today is I didn't talk about a lot of our community work, especially on the south side of Chicago, and not just with literacy groups and libraries and other educators, but also with cultural groups in general. And we care deeply about them. We are not we don't pretend to know about literacy beyond that we love books and bookstores. So literacy is a really powerful mission for people, and we really respect people who are doing that work. And we have partnered with many, including the Chicago Literacy Alliance when it was still around, and other institutions who are doing this work. We're really lucky as a store, and when I say store, by the way, I mean the East Wing and the West Wing, 57th Street and the Co-op. We won in 2019 the most prestigious national award for children's book selling, and we're incredibly proud of it. 57th Street Books was considered the best bookstore, children's bookstore, I should say adult bookstore with a children's section. They have a separate award for a children's bookstore in the country, and we worked really hard to, not to win that award, and we continue to work hard to support our community of young readers. And we have people who are being raised in our stores who are fourth generation raised in that store. They went to the story times, and some of them went to story times with Franny Billingsley, who's still doing story times. She's been doing them since the 90s, on and off. And we have however many thousands of students coming through every year. And part of why we do course books in the stores, even though it is it's a lot of work, and it's probably a cost to us. And we love you, faculty. We love you so much. We love you so much. Very easy to work with most of the time. No offense. I'm looking at the faculty here. No, truly, and we really appreciate it. And it actually is the faculty who send students here that help us bring on the next generation. And many students we see come in begrudgingly that first year. And then the second year, they might be coming to some events and it's maybe because their faculty are saying you need to come to some of these events. But by the third and fourth year, they're enthusiasts. And part of why we have all those zip codes in that survey is because people come and go. This is a transient neighborhood as much as a small town. It's both. And it's a really beautiful thing. So,
thinking of sort of the, as maybe say to use the dematerialization of a text. Given the fate of vinyl, VHS, and theatrical screenings,
yeah.
and the arrival of Kindle, etc., these things are going to be obsolete, just like opera might be obsolete when there's no one who really treasures it, because there's going to be a time when the University of Chicago Alumni Magazine is going to report on the first student who never had to buy a textbook in their 4 years of their undergraduate career. So, I mean, are the university presses really sort of wishing to go digital and not go through the expense of building these objects and putting them on shelves of the increasingly few places like this?
Yeah. Great question. I keep looking because we have the director of the Association of University Presses here. He's a board member, but he must have just stepped out, or maybe he heard your question and stepped out. I was privileged to just give a talk to the directors. It was 70, oh, there he is. Hi, Peter. 70 directors of university presses throughout the country. Peter brought everyone here to Chicago and was able to give a talk and then engage in a session the next day where we talked about what is the role of bookstores. But the session after I left, we were talking about what about open access, what about digital, I mean, all of those questions, and they're all great questions. And I was told by somebody in our community who is one of the most brilliant people I've ever met, when I was bemoaning, I won't name them, the loss of a university press, who said, not every university needs a press. And I was shocked. I thought, wow, that's what a thing to say. And I think that there is an important existential question that all of us must be asking right now, and we're only focusing on the bookstores, but do we need bookstores in the 21st century? If so, why? Do we need university presses in the 21st century? If so, why? For so long it was about tenure and tenure in the humanities, and is that really what this is about? Is it about scholarship that's being published in books as opposed to articles? What do we actually need university presses for? What do we need regular presses for? What do we need first-time novelists and poets for? And I'm not saying we don't, I'm saying, adamantly saying we do. But let's use 21st century models. Let's create a new vision for what this industry or this endeavor looks like in the 21st century and answer it from a place of strength, power, vision, and an acknowledgement of all of these facts. So one of the things that I would say about bookstores is, will books go away? I don't think so. I think I doubt many of us think that physical books will go away entirely, but will course books go away as a physical object? Quite likely. Certainly expensive textbooks.
I think my question could have been,
Textbooks.
why do we need paper?
Why do we need paper? Well, and so here's one of the examples, and I'm looking at our beautiful staff recommendations section, and you can look at the front table. One of the things that we think about is if a bookstore can't make money selling books, physical books alone, and we have so many people who love to read on a digital device or listen to audiobooks, including scholarly books, we're agnostic about where people get their books. Same with libraries. Libraries do a great job of bringing books together, and if an acquisitions librarian does an exceptional job, the collection of the moment, their vision for that collection of what's important in that moment is going to be scattered throughout the community because people will check those books out, and when you come into the library, you'll find the books they thought were important, a year or two ago. But that physical walk through the space is critically important, and that is our argument, is that there is a value alone in just walking these shelves. And it could be that, and browsing the books and touching the books and smelling them and being among people with those books. And in our lifetime, I hope and think that part won't go away. And I think university presses should ask that. Do we need 400 publishers or 200? And we're asking those questions all the time about what books are important. But what we aren't saying is that the physical space for books will go away, even if the physical books go, but they're less and less because they still need to be discovered somehow. And that is and there still needs to be a community that's built around them, a book culture. And we are creators of book culture. Thank you for that question. And it's a deep question, and we should be asking it more because I think answering it deliberately will help us create that vision for the future that won't just be about some romantic vision of the past, and we want to hold on to something that really isn't as important anymore. So, okay, I got a call for time. What's that?
I just wanted to say that it's fabulous to have somebody with the passion you have.
Thank you.
For this enterprise. We should all be very, very grateful that we have the right guy in the right place.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I had one more hand up, so I'm going to take. No, you good? Okay. All right. Thank you all so much. Oh, wait, one more. Last one. Okay. Go ahead.
You mentioned about the bookstore here, especially as a cultural institution, and there has research been done into this type of bookstore as possibly segueing into like the museum management model. Not that museums are doing great, I'm sure. I mean, everyone, but in terms of to recognize that, white paper,
Mm-hmm.
like you were saying, selling, like you could say, targeted to browse.
Yeah.
That kind of, and then to fundraise, but in a hybrid kind of, you can buy
Right.
objects that
Yeah.
are curated.
We're essentially, yeah.
They are.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. So just comparing us to other cultural institutions, their funding models, the answer is yes. That's exactly what we're trying to do, is have this hybrid model of funding where it's not necessarily the person at the register who pays more because access matters and the books are worth what people think they are, but also that the space itself is supported by others who find value in it. So thank you for that. Thank you all. $12.50 a month, $150 a year. Buy books while you're here or just talk to booksellers and say thank you. They work really hard on behalf of these stores and do a great job. And thanks for coming out tonight. I appreciate it.